What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another market guide and price guide for vintage Star Wars figures, this time focused on loose graded figures. We've got AFA, CAS, and UKG graded examples, everything from the early first 12 figures all the way through the last 17. As usual, I tried to pull a pretty wide assortment of items, and where possible, I did try to include auctions, and I'm almost positive that all of these are auctions that I'm going to show you. And there were some surprises. There were some surprises on the upper end of the scale, and there were some good deals to be had. Just like everything on eBay, it's kind of all over the map right now. It's the Wild West in terms of prices, and I can't make heads or tails of it, but at the very least, I can at least provide you data for those of you looking for that particular figure so you can find a good deal. And so let's start off with an interesting one. This is not graded per se, but it's been authenticated by AFA/CIB. And this is a Greedo transparency from the photo shoot for the backs of the card backs. So you can see right there that there's a Greedo figure on one of these little slides. And so this probably came from Kim Simmons, who is kind of the most well-known photographer. And this slide was then sent in to AFA, and they don't grade that, but they authenticated it on December 16th of 2014, and the notes say this slide is verified to have originated from the original Kenner photographer and is from the same photography shoot featured on the 1978 20 back. So this photography slide is what was used to make the 20 backs. So pretty cool item, you know. It's not something you see every day, and it was at auction, so I wanted to show it. It sold for $406.98 free shipping. So kind of an interesting off-the-wall item and was worth showing. Next up was an AFA 80 Plus Blue Snags, and this one had the toe dent. So this is the Hong Kong with the toe dent. Obviously the no toe dent usually goes for just a smidge more, just a tad more. This one sold in an auction for $910 on July 1st, 25 bids on that one. New case style. And I had a subscriber mention, hey, why do you talk about new case style versus old case style so much? Well, it's because the price difference is pretty substantial. But if you look at old cases versus new cases, number one, you know it was fairly recently graded since these cases came out in 2019. But also they display better, and the resale market for those is higher. And I did a video on that a while back where I showed that the average price difference from old cases versus new cases is about 25% or so on average. And I took like a very non-scientific approach. I picked like 15 or 20 figures, and I looked at the sales price, recent sales prices for old cases versus new cases, and the average ended up being about 25%. So that's why I talk about it. I'm not disparaging old cases. Old cases are perfectly fine. I've got plenty of them in my collection. But I did want to at least point out, where possible, if I think it was a good deal and it had a new case style, you know, that's a 25% difference in price. And I think it's worth pointing out. So in this one, it did have a new case style, $910 for an AFA 80 Plus. I think that's fair. We've seen AFA 85s go for $1,300 or more. Next up, we had an uncirculated 85 Princess Leia black hair and belt. Now, this was sold by CIB, which is affiliated with AFA, the same company that does these CIBs, these certificates of authenticity. And CIB had a number of different examples going. This was a U85 grade with the new case style. That one sold for $643. Probably about market, honestly. An AFA 85, whether it's uncirculated or not, with the new case, you're probably talking $650 or so. And that's what that one sold for. They also had a Luke Skywalker Hoth U85 old case style that sold for $305. Now, we did document one fairly recently that was the exact same grade. It did not have the uncirculated designation, but it was a new case style, and that one sold for $420. So in that case, it sold for about 30% more than what this old case style sold for. And again, I'm just pointing it out for information purposes. I don't care what you collect, and I'm not trying to disparage anybody's collection. Believe me, I've got plenty of both. I've got new cases and old cases, and I don't mind mixing them because it's just too hard to keep up with. And yes, they might come out with some new cases eventually that even put these new cases from AFA, CAS, and UKG to shame. But I don't know how you can really improve too much on these figure cases. But I guess it's possible. Here was a Gamorrean Guard made in Mexico. This was also a U85. That one sold for $202.50. I thought that's a pretty good deal. Now, this one was a U85, but look at the wear on the horns. You can see that it's got some wear to the horns on that and on the teeth. So this was a pretty generous U85, in my opinion. This is probably more like an 80 plus, in my opinion, based on the wear to the teeth and the horns on that one. Next up, we've got some Spanish figures that sold at auction. A UKG 80% Spanish POC ADAT driver. That one sold for 185 pounds, which is $235. That's a little higher than where we've seen this one sell recently. Another one sold for about $150, 150 US dollars. So that one sold for $234. This was the Spanish POC Luke X-Wing pilot. This is a nice one. It was a UKG 75, although I would argue it was overgraded because the emblems on his helmet, as you can see there, were basically non-existent. So UKG was pretty generous with that score. The rest of the figure was pretty good paint, though. The hands hardly had any wear. It's known to have the pale hands. Hardly any wear to the rest of the figure. It's just those emblems on the head, which is a common defect for those early Spanish Luke X-Wings. But that one sold for 73 pounds. I thought that was a really good deal. Really good deal for an early Spanish Luke X-Wing. Here was a PBP Han Solo graded UKG 80%. That one also sold for 90 pounds. That's about market. That's 114 US dollars. And I think I've got a UKG 85% that I probably paid about 120 US dollars for. So this one was about the same price, maybe a little less. Next up was a baggie. This was a UKG 85% Chief Chirpa baggie with the deluxe case style. That one sold for 96 pounds, which is 122 US dollars. That's another good buy there for a fairly common baggie, but pretty cool to see that one sell. Next up was a Lily Letty UKG 80% Stormtrooper, and it got the 80% with some slight discoloration to the limbs. You can see that the torso and head are not quite the same color as the legs and arms, and it's a different kind of plastic, I'm sure, so that's probably plays into it, but I think that's every bit of an 80%. That one sold for 102 pounds, which I thought was a pretty good buy. That's 130 US dollars. That's a price I would have paid all day long for. You can see Lily Letty no COO Stormtrooper. So another nice foreign variant that sold. Now, what's interesting here is I've got the blank raised bar brown-haired Luke Bespin. One of them is graded UKG 85%, and one of them is graded AFA 85%. So I wanted to do a comparison here to show you. They both had brand new cases. This one sold, the UKG 85% sold for 142 pounds in an auction, which is 180 US dollars. And then over here in the US is the AFA example. This was an AFA 85, exact same figure, blank raised bar. So this is probably a Meccano, if I had to guess. Brown-haired Luke Bespin. That one sold for 308 US dollars in an auction. Both of them ended right around the same time. This one closed on July 1st. This one closed on July 2nd. So pretty dramatic price difference. So if you look at a UKG 85% versus an AFA 85%. This same seller, Brown's 8888, always has beautiful figures. He had a number of auctions going. Here was an AFA 85 Han Solo. This was the Hong Kong with the dark tan pants. Not the really dark brown, but just the kind of the brownish pants. There's also a beige Hong Kong. And I can't keep up with all the different variations. There's a skinny thumb versus the regular thumb, like this one here. But this one had the tan pants, AFA 85. That one sold for $202.50. Next up was an AFA 85 Plus beige torso Admiral Akbar. That one sold for $180. I thought that was a pretty good buy there for a very high grade Admiral Akbar. It's a Trump. Don't overpay. Next up was an AFA 85 Hong Kong Leia Bush. That was a very nice looking figure, very high grade. That one sold for $232.50 plus $6 shipping. So this seller always has really high grade examples. I've never bought from him, I don't think. Maybe I have, but anyway, just always has 80 pluses, 85s and above. Next up was an AFA 85 Hong Kong Darth Vader. So just a standard Hong Kong Vader. They tend to, Vaders, I feel like in high grade AFA 85s, they are going up a little bit. They bounced up to like 330, then they dropped back down to like 225 to 250. Now it's starting to creep back up again. This one sold for 270. I found another AFA 85 with the lettered saber hilt that sold for over $300. So you got to pay big money for those loose graded Darth Vaders. Next up, I thought this was a particularly good buy, and I know who bought this, so congrats to my Patreon supporter who bought this. This was a Luke X-Wing Hong Kong graded AFA 85. Very tough to get an AFA 85 for a Luke X-Wing. It just never, ever happens. They grade these super strict, kind of like the Blue Snags or Princess Leia's. It's very, very tough to get 85 grades. This one sold for $286 on 17 bids. I thought that was a bargain. Usually you're over $300 to $350 for an AFA 85 Hong Kong Luke X-Wing. But that was a gorgeous example. Look how clean and crisp that was. That looks card fresh to me and worth every penny of $286. Next up was an AFA 80 Plus Luke Farm Boy, and I believe this is the Taiwan. Yeah, this was the Taiwan blonde-haired glossy pants. You can tell it's got a very kind of distinctive, I don't know what it is. It's like the face mold is a little more narrow. It's a little almost like an Asian look to his face. And I've always noticed that, is that versus the Hong Kong, it's maybe a little rounder cheeks. But the Taiwan, at least this one's got kind of a very narrow, thinner face sculpt. But that's a beautiful figure, AFA 80 Plus. That one sold in an auction for $305 plus shipping. Next up was an AFA 85 Plus Yoda with the brown snake. So I was actually surprised that this one did not sell higher. Usually the brown snake is more desirable, and usually an AFA 85 goes for $300 to $330-ish. But this was an AFA 85 Plus, and usually you can like add quite a bit, a big multiple or a big premium on top for an 85 Plus. But I'm surprised that one did sell for only $310. I was expecting $400 plus on that one. So I thought that was a really, really good buy there for a brown snake Yoda. Next up was an AFA 85 standard Hong Kong Boba Fett. That one sold for $330. And my, how times have changed versus, January of last year when the Book of Boba Fett was out, and these were going for like $450 to $550. I mean, crazy numbers for standard Hong Kong Boba Fetts, but they have come well back down to earth and kind of more in line with market value and realistic market value, I would say, fair market value. This one sold for $330 again on 23 bids. I thought that was a very fair price. This price really surprised me. I think I had this one in my what to buy video a couple weeks ago, and it was a CAS 90 Plus, and I was thinking it would sell for like $250-ish maybe at the high end. It sold for 338 pounds, which is $430. This is the 21B with the flat paint, I believe. Flat blue paint, 90 plus, which admittedly is very tough to do. I don't think I've ever gotten a 90 plus on anything that I've sent in. Maybe one or two, like bootlegs or something like that over the history of everything I've ever submitted to CAS or AFA. I've never gotten a 90 with AFA. And I think I've only gotten maybe one or two 90 pluses, but they were never licensed figures. They were like more modern, like 2000 era Oratet bootlegs. But this 90 plus 21B sold for $430 US. That was a big, big number. I was surprised it sold that high, but certainly was a beauty. Next up, this price also surprised me. This was a Lily Letty Biker Scout, but it was only graded 75 plus with CAS, and it sold for $355. That's what I paid for my mint on card, Lily Letty, made in Mexico card for the Biker Scout. I bought that on Hakes. That's after the buyer's premium. I paid about $350 or less for mine, and this one is a loose graded for 75 plus grade. It's not like this was an 85 plus or a 90. It was a 75 plus Lily Letty that sold for $355. I have no idea why that one sold so high. Again, I paid that exact amount or less for my mint on card made in Mexico. So just a crazy, crazy price on that one. Next up was a last 17 Yak Face UKG 85%. Brand new case. That one sold for $637 US. That's kind of right in line with where Yak Faces are selling UKG 85%. $600 to $650. AFA 85s are selling as high as about $850 right now. And I've seen higher, but I would say market is anywhere from $700 to $850 for an AFA 85. So that was a pretty example. Finally was a UKG 80% R2-D2 pop-up saber, another beautiful last 17 figure. Very slight yellowing to the sticker on that one. I think I also had this one in my buy it now, and I was expecting around $850 US. So I was a little low on my on my guess. It sold for $914 US, which is 720 pounds. So anyway, just some more data out there. Some examples sold for a little bit higher, some a little bit lower, but lots of surprises on the upper end as well as the lower end. I hope you guys find what you're looking for if you're out there toy hunting. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.